Welcome everyone and happy Friday. As you know, this is our last brown bag of a spring semester. And so for those of you who are returning to our brown bags, thank you. We're happy you are here. If you're here for the first time, we are happy you're here as well. And as you know, we start planning for the brown bags for the fall semester right at the end of the spring semester. And so I know that I recognize some names here. And so if some of you are interested in leading brown bags in the fall semester, please reach out to me. And I'm happy to meet with you, and then we can talk about topics. And whether you are a grad student or an instructional staff or a faculty or a lecturer, we're happy to have you lead a brown bag for us next semester. And so I'm going to go ahead now and introduce our leader today. Let me share my screen. So today's topic is enhancing student instructor interactions in large asynchronous gen ed science classes. And so the speaker today is Dr. Marianne Breinig. She's professor in physics, and she teaches undergraduate and graduate level physics courses, and she develops teaching materials for online and hybrid courses. She is very interested in new modes of content delivery. She received the 2016 College of Arts and Sciences James R. and Nell Cunningham Outstanding Teacher Award, the 2017 University Libraries Open Education Trailblazer Award, and the 2019 L.R. Hessler Award for Excellence in Teaching and Service. Thank you, Dr. Breinig, for agreeing to lead the session today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you now.
I want to talk to you about two techniques that I use in my course to enhance student-student and student-instructor interactions. And you can interrupt me at any time and ask questions about it. I will concentrate on how I use these techniques in the course sequence Physics 221, 222. That course sequence is a college physics course sequence with labs, and it does not require calculus. And it's a service course sequence mostly taken by students majoring in the life science. And the Department of Physics offers this course sequence in 3 different formats. One is the traditional lecture lab format. One is a hybrid, what we call studio physics format. And one is an asynchronous, totally online format. And it's important to note that the students have a choice. They can choose which format they want to take this class in. And this semester, I teach Physics 221. It usually alters from semester to semester in both the hybrid format, which has 175 students in it, and in the online format, which has 275 students registered. And I tell the students well before classes start what this format entails, so they still have choices to switch if they somehow did not understand it from the catalog alone and feel uncomfortable about the format. And I've been teaching this for a long time. I've been teaching in the hybrid and online format together since fall 2020. And each year, each semester, essentially, I make incremental changes to it. So the course changes, but not totally changes, but just incremental changes. So the way I set up the course is that Physics 221 has a Canvas site, obviously, and it has a website that is linked from Canvas. And the website holds all the materials that the students have to read and it's a class material that I have developed. And it also holds all the materials that are required for the labs. And the material is divided in 12 modules, and students are required to complete one module per week. And the class has a strict schedule, which the students can find both on the Canvas site and on the class website. They have to submit 2 homework assignments, which are in the format of Canvas quizzes each week, 1 lab report each week, and they have to participate into a discussion or communication forum each week. I tried to show you this from looking at the Canvas site. This is the Canvas site for the course, and it has the typical stuff on the site. And then to get to the class material, students just have to click on the link, and that brings them to the class website. The class material is not integrated into Canvas, mainly because I use the same material in different classes with different Canvas sites. That's one way. Otherwise, I'd have to copy it from Canvas site to Canvas site. And second, because I use interactive elements that require JavaScript that just don't run under Canvas. So we have the website on a separate server. And then you see there is a syllabus that is always available on Canvas and on the website. There's a list of modules, but the main thing is the strict schedule. Here you have the schedule. Always 1 week is 2 entries, and you see they have to do the 2 assignments, A1, H1, then they have to do lab 1 and discussion 1. That is required. All this is handed in Canvas, but it just reminds them once more, this is required for this week. There's also an open access textbook, College Physics from OpenStax, and the appropriate chapters are also linked for students to read, but the required material is the class material I have developed. The strict schedule I feel is really important for a science class. If you go look here, it starts with position, displacement, acceleration. Well, you cannot understand Newton's laws unless you have a good grasp of the concept of acceleration. F equals ma means nothing if you don't understand what acceleration is. And then the next module is application of Newton's laws. And you cannot apply Newton's laws if you don't understand them. So you have to make sure. You cannot say, oh, you can hand this in later, or you can work on your own pace and I'll accept it in the 3rd week. Because if each module builds on each other, and if a student falls behind, then it is really hard to catch up again. So that's why we have the really strict schedule for the classes. And both the hybrid and the online class have the same strict schedule. The schedule is actually exactly the same for the hybrid class and for the online class, and the class material that the students have to work with is exactly the same for the hybrid and the online class. Now, the class material is text-based. If you look, well, for example, we can look on Newton's law, and if you look under Newton's first law, you see the text-based material, but there are links to external resources, other text resources, video resources, simulations, so students can engage with the material in different formats. There is also for each module questions embedded into the module. Like, for example, here is embedded question 1 for this module. And the embedded questions ask the students to discuss this question with their fellow students in the discussion forum. The questions are usually things that I know students have misconceptions about, and so they should start talking about it, hopefully working it out by themselves, but if not, then with feedback from the instructors. So going back to Canvas, in addition to this material on Canvas, I also have module summaries. These are PDFs. These are very much a summary of the slides that I would use in a lecture base in the hybrid course. Not the, well, there are some of the type of clicker questions that I ask, but I have the questions there, and then they can look and also get the answer and an explanation of the answers. These summary slides are used quite extensively by the students, particularly once they start studying for the test, because it puts everything once more together. I also have short video clips under Ponapto video. Everything on Canvas for large classes is very, very slow. So, but these video notes that I publish, they pretty much not used at all. Students do not use the videos. At most of the 275, 5 students look at a video, and they usually don't look at the whole thing. They look at maybe 1 or 2 sections of it, but not at the whole thing. And it could be that I make really, really boring videos. That could be the case. But I know that another instructor in our department makes really, really great videos, and he has the same experience. People look at the PDFs, but they just don't look at the videos. So I don't know why, but they do not look at that. They don't like this particularly. So that's kind of the class structure. What's the difference between the hybrid and the online course? Well, the hybrid course has this online component. The students still have to work reading the materials, looking at the videos, following some of the links. But they also have a weekly class meeting in a large lecture hall, one class meeting in a lecture hall, like a Tuesday, Thursday class meeting. And then they have GTA-led studio sessions. Studio sessions are kind of a lab recitation of the traditional classes wrapped into one, where the GTAs elaborate more on some of the concepts that we don't discuss in the last class meeting, and there is a hands-on lab component to that. And there's approximately 30 students and 2 GTAs per studio session. The online course has absolutely no class meeting and replaces the studio sessions with online labs. But we have GTAs for the online labs that help the students with the labs, mostly through the discussion forum and through office hours, and that grade the lab reports. So what always has puzzled me is, why do students consistently state that the online course provides them with more individualized feedback than many of the other courses? That comes from the course evaluations. But another thing is, why do students in the online course perform significantly better on the same tests under exactly the same conditions? Because everybody has the online tests under exactly the same conditions than the students in the hybrid course. And I've thought about that this might actually be because it's a different population. Students choose to be in the online course, and students that choose online instructions might be a different population than students that choose in-person instructions. And there is something to that, but that's not the complete story, because I made changes to the hybrid course that reduced that difference. So I know what works and what doesn't work by having made these changes over the years. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the discussion forum. It is a required class participation activity for the students. They have to do it. They are required to make at least one meaningful contribution to each module discussion forum. So one contribution per week is the minimum that they have to do. And each discussion forum is open for exactly 1 week, and then the next one opens and that one closes and you can no longer add to it. You can still read everything, you can no longer add to it. And there's absolutely no other rules for how the students have to engage. Just contribute. And I use the old style discussion forum. Canvas changed to a new feature, but you can turn it off if you go to settings, feature options. And the new feature absolutely doesn't work for me at all. So it's the old style discussion forum where students can see and reply to any post. You can scroll through all the posts that are there and see and reply to any post. And they can use the forum search function, or they can just use the browser search function to find anything that they're interested in. And to keep the forum somewhat organized, I encourage the students to use threaded discussion under 4 main headlines. Now, again, I can go to this. If I go to discussion first on Canvas, again, it's slow. You can see that we have these discussions for the module. Now I have so many students, they cannot all be in one discussion forum. So I have actually for each module 3 different discussion forums. That's why this is so long. But you can see that there's always a lot of contributions to each forum per week. Students have to do it, so they do it, I guess. So right now we're on the last one. And so how to get it started, because the last one, everything has already started. I'm just showing here how I set it up to keep it a little bit organized, because if it's so free, then how do you find something? So I asked them, first of all, to use threaded discussions. And then I give them 4 topics under which to post depending on what they want to talk about. Obviously, students want to talk about their homework problems, and I have some extra credit problems that are harder problems, and they want to talk about and discuss this. Then there is the lab topics that is mostly handled by the lab instructors that answer all the questions that they normally would answer there. Then there is the topics of the embedded questions, where students are discussing their opinions and hopefully converging to some understanding of the physics. In the asked for in the embedded question, and other is anything that doesn't fit into these categories, and that works reasonably well. So if I go back to the PowerPoint, first of all, the forums work best if you have about 50 to 70 students contributing. If it's too small, like I have another online class which has only 15 students, and it works, but not that great. There's not that much discussion. There are not enough students there. But if you have about 50 to 70 students, there are always some students that jump in right away as soon as a discussion forum opens. And they post questions, they post statements, they address the embedded question, and they get things started. And then other people look at it, other students look at it, and they see that it's useful to them. And then they start contributing to it too. And they might ask more questions. They might just thank the other person for having contributed something that they also were worried about. But it always gets started and starts developing right away as soon as the forum opens, and obviously builds up. And the last day before it closes, there's a lot of discussion, because at the last day, a lot of things are due: the homework, the lab, the extra credit, everything is due. So in the last 2 days, there's a really lot of activity on the discussion forum. So even so, if students do not post something earth-shattering, but just, okay, thank you, I'm very grateful that you asked these questions, so at least they have looked at things and engaged with students. So I'm just showing here, since I cannot show the actual stuff because the names are there, I'm just showing how this old style discussion forum works. You have these threaded discussion, and it's just a really long list, but you go, somebody asks something, somebody gives the comments of where they could look up things. Then other people think of it, thank them. So that's kind of the idea of how the discussion forum works. Here's one for the embedded questions. People state something, other people say if they think the same thing or if they think something different. It works really quite well, and develops quickly into enough stuff that students really find it useful to read. So the question then is, how do the instructors use the forum? I, in my class, and 5 GTA co-instructors assigned to the online course read every post. We actually read every post. We provide feedback to every question that has not already been asked or answered in the forum. GTAs are normally assigned to teach and create 2 in-person lab sections with recitation. That's 2.5 to 3 hours per section. So that's on the order of 5 hours a week that they would spend face-to-face with students. Well, the online instructor do not have to spend face-to-face time with students. We still have the office hours, but the in-class and the in-person and the online GTAs have to have office hours. But otherwise, they do not have to interact with the students face-to-face in the lab. So we ask them to spend that time in the discussion forum, reading through the posts and answering the posts. And so if each of them would spend 5 hours a week, that would be a lot of interaction. Now, it doesn't happen that way because I have probably 2 GTAs who spend a lot of time and answer a lot of questions. I have 2 GTAs that spend some time, but definitely not that many hours in the forum, and have 1 GTA who just does not do anything, and I can't do nothing about it. And the others just take up the slack, and I take up the slack. But we have agreed that different instructors monitor the forum at different times. So each forum is addressed at least 4 times a day, probably more. So students get really, really quick feedback because we have this many students, we have this many instructors, so we can get to them in a reasonably quick time. Often, once an instructor has provided feedback, given a hint to reading materials, and so on, then other students pick up this feedback and expand on it for the other students, and that is really appreciated. Students seem to really learn best when they instructed by other students to look at the same resources that an instructor tells them to. But when another student tells them to look at it, they are much more adept to look at it and learn from it. I have the feeling that many students today look at class instructions, particularly for like service courses in grades, more as a way of signaling than of learning. And they think that they learn outside the classroom on their own. And the grade stuff, that's more for signaling to get into grad school, to get into med school or something, but that's not where they think they're learning. And so kind of guiding them to the right resources is probably the best thing we can do. So that's one of the things we have done, is we have used this discussion forum as a communication forum. And because it worked really well with the online course, we now require the hybrid course students also to use the discussion forum. And as soon as we did that, the grade difference shrunk. It is not completely gone, so there is probably a population difference, but it made a big difference as far as shrinking the difference in the test grades between the hybrid and the online sections. Then the other thing we have implemented is making changes to our online laboratories. And the reason is that students like to take shortcuts, particularly for service courses. They really overloaded, and whatever they can do to take a shortcut, they will take it. So laboratory reports from previous semesters are easily available on what I call cheating sites, but sites where students post their reports. And it is very tempting for students to just copy these reports. So what we're doing is, well, we're making modifications to the labs each semester to at least some sections of the lab, so we can recognize if somebody used old data, because the data are now different than they used to be. But we also gradually modifying the labs to become more exploratory and less cookbook-like, to not tell the students exactly what to do, but to tell them to accomplish something and figuring out themselves how to do it. So even if they look at write-ups from previous semesters, which are often wrong, they still have to do the lab themselves. And I just show one maybe example of a lab that we have developed that kind of is open-ended. We have like this optics lab that I have constructed that looks exactly like the optics lab that people have to do in our actual face-to-face optics lab. They have components. They can, like, here's a polarization lab. They can move components around. There are polarizers, there are class slides, there is a laser. That one at the moment is fixed. They can move a power meter into the laser and read the power on the power meter and so on. So they have to develop a setup like they would do in a normal lab. You can do all the things that you would do in a normal lab, like you can adjust post heights if you want to align things differently. You can rotate the post holders, and you can always look at it in zooming or walk around the table kind of thing. You can rotate the polarizers. So it's pretty free. And then we say, okay, do this. Use two polarizers and establish the law of Malus or something. Or figure out how to set up an experiment so you reflect the laser from a class slide and get polarization by reflection. And then we have talked about this beforehand in the material, but we don't tell them exactly how to do it. And so everybody's setup should look slightly different because you're not going to put things in exactly the same place. So in addition, so that the labs are now more exploratory, we also have changed the requirements for the lab reports. All lab reports now must contain a reflection, and the reflection is 25% of the grade. And so there are some instructions down there of what these reflections should contain. Like, did you understand what you were doing? Do you have any questions? Did you expect the results that you got? Do you have suggestions on how to improve the exercise? What was difficult? What was easy for you? It doesn't have to be very long, but the lab instructors tell me that they can easily see from the reflection who has actually done the lab and who has probably copied from somewhere and is just bringing something up. And I just got here, I copied 2 reflections. I don't create the lab, so I don't know how typical they are. They was randomly actually selected. I just clicked on 2 labs that had gotten pretty good grades. So I presumed that they were good reflections, but otherwise I don't know. But you can read here what the students say. What was the difficulty? I could not figure out how to obtain certain values from the graph, so I struggled a bit. And then with all being said, I can now say for sure that with some help from the discussion pages on the physics side, I have a pretty decent grasp of the question asked in this lab. So it seems reasonably authentic, and we think that this student pretty much engaged with the lab and did something and actually learned something from the lab. Here's another one. Again, people talk about that it wasn't that easy for them, that they had some problems with it, but they used the discussion board where the lab instructors give a lot of feedbacks to help them answering their questions. And then there's open-ended pieces in these labs. This lab referred to a simulation, so they could play around with the simulation and see effects and see if that gives them additional insight about the physics that they were studying. So these are my main conclusions, my main topics that I wanted to discuss. The 2 things that I think made the biggest difference is this discussion forum. And I used a different discussion forum for 1 semester. I used Piazza, And that didn't work very well at all. Even so, it's a nice forum, but it is not well integrated with Canvas. In particular, if you need to put students into different sections, there was all kinds of problems with that. And I just went to the Canvas discussion forum, which I initially wanted to avoid, but I found out that it works quite well. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
There are a few, Miriam, there are a few questions in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so there's one question. How many total students do you have in all three types of classes, and how many GTAs do you have? So there's usually we don't offer all three types of classes every semester. We offer the online version every semester, and then either the hybrid or the traditional lecture lab class. Like for 221, the traditional lecture lab class is in the fall, the hybrid class is in the spring. It's the off sequence. The sequence starts in the spring and then goes on in the fall. The online is always there. So this year I have like 450 students in Physics 222. Physics 222 is also offered in the summer. In the summer, it's only online, and there's usually 120, so that's kind of the population size. Physics, I was confused. Right now, I have 450 students in Physics 221. Physics 222 has usually somewhat fewer students because, first of all, it's in the summer where there's already students taking it, and then it's not required for all the students that have to take Physics 221. But like in the fall, for the fall semester for 222, I already have about 200 students registered in the online section. Somehow the online section is becoming more and more popular as we go from 221 to 222.
I have a question about the videos, unless there's another question in the chat, Igor.
Yeah, there's another question from
Okay.
Chris Cantoni.
Hey, and it was already answered throughout, but I was just kind of curious how you structure your discussion boards with your students. So like if there's like a reflection process, and if you guide the students with some questions, like poking questions to help kind of like frame the conversation, but it didn't seem like that's how you do that, which is totally fine. It was just more of a curiosity question, but I think you kind of answered it as you were presenting.
I on purpose wanted to not structure it this way. I just wanted them to be able to pretty much address everything they wanted to address. I would say half the questions that they ask are about the homework and the extra credit. Then there is quite a few questions about the lab. I answer the questions about the homework and extra credit. I do not answer most questions about the lab because the lab instructors take care of that, because they are the lab instructors and they answer the lab questions. The embedded questions we usually let run. We just look if they go really off track. If they go really off track, we jump in and say, hey, you guys are really converging on something that is wrong. You have to look at it this way or something. But usually they kind of by themselves converge onto most students agreeing on the right answer and discussing it further and helping each other. That's quite a bit of, so the lab and the embedded question take most of the other percent. There's always some other might be questions about the textbook. Not that many students seem to read the textbook. I don't get that many questions about the textbook. there's questions about the exam times, questions that about the syllabus that they should have read but somehow missed. Usually they answered by other students that say, hey, you should have looked at the syllabus, it's right there, or something like that. So that's that type of stuff.
That sounds great. Yeah, and I'm glad it works out well for you. So thank you. I appreciate you answering the question.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, number 2 question.
I'm the second Chris.
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a question about going back to the videos. I was interested in when you said the students are not watching the videos and engaging with your PDFs. And then Caroline Weinhold said that her class, they actually watch the videos and don't engage. And I'm curious, I'm wondering if that's the subject matter, or Miriam, maybe in your classes, is there a difference between online students and the hybrid students? Can you tell if there, or is it all the students not engaging in the videos?
I mean, I give the same videos to the hybrid also. They don't watch it either. I have tried things with video. I have tried to make, to record the lectures, the class meeting. I have edited so that I took out the dead spaces, and so they weren't quite as long. People watch maybe 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see this on the Panopto video statistics, what they watch. They don't. In these videos that I now have, I have sometimes included some demos, and I say, watch it for the demos. Not many watch it. So I have now made the demos into additional small videos that I just embed into the class material. And there, I don't really know if they watch it or not,
Mm-hmm.
but at least it's part of the flow. They don't have to go out of the flow and click on Panopto video to see the videos, but they just.
Yeah, it's curious to me what I'm just wondering if it's maybe the demographic of the students, or if it's the actual class, because Caroline said hers was biology, and so maybe it's just the difference between, I don't know, but I would be curious to, see, kind of find out what their students, maybe find out what the students say about that. It's just interesting to me.
Yeah,
thank you.
I have not asked. I should probably ask sometime, why don't you watch the videos? And maybe she's saying they are really boring and you're not.
I mean, maybe that could be it. I don't know. Because we, of course, we try to encourage videos, or at least, have multiple formats, and but yeah, I guess it just depends on the student too. But Caroline has her hand.
Students don't watch videos. I think, like, they watch the YouTube videos that I direct them to, or certainly some of the YouTube videos that I direct them to. I think they watch the video clips that I embed into the class material, because sometimes I ask about it and they say, yeah, I saw it in this video clip, but they don't watch those things under Panopto video.
Okay.
Caroline has a question, I think.
Yeah, I want to make a comment about the video, but then I do have a question too. So in the biology courses I was referring to, we don't have an online version. So this is just in-person classes, and we record the videos. And so there, the students just want everything recorded. They don't want to come to class. They don't want to engage wherever. So they just want everything recorded for them. So it was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment. So not an exact comparison, but I agree, there might be some student differences. It might be biology versus more of a math-based physics experience. But the question I did want to ask is, it sounds like now that you've added the discussion forum to the hybrid format, that really the main difference is they either have an online lab or an in-person lab. And in the hybrid format, they also have a weekly discussion section and weekly meetings.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, really, why would a student choose hybrid versus asynchronous? Is there a credit difference? Is there a programmatic difference? Do students, why would they choose or be directed to one versus the other?
the students in the hybrid class that come and talk to me say they go there because they like the face-to-face interaction with their lab instructors. The lab instructors, the hybrid classes, they do the same simulations like on online, but then they also have hands-on lab. And it happens in a studio physics classroom where they work in groups of 2, and the lab instructors walk around and help them. And the students like that. I mean, there's lots of students who like this personal interaction. They feel that helps them. They don't have to figure it out totally by themselves or have to wait in the discussion forum to get an answer or something. It's immediate. So several students in the hybrid formats that they prefer that, they want to come there. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to come also to a lecture. I usually lose about a third of the students towards the end of the semester in the lecture. The ones that come, they enjoy it because we have nice demos and they like it, but there's a lot of students that just skip it. They don't seem to skip the studio sessions labs, but they skip the lectures. And I think, yeah, like for example, if I didn't have the extensive material, like this is just one example from the Newton's first law, but there's all this text-based material. So if that wasn't there and they had to come to class and take notes or so, then they probably also would watch the videos because it's hard to take notes quickly. But all the material that I discuss is provided, and then the slides are also provided. So they probably don't feel that my face and my voice adds a lot to it.
There's another question in the chat. Lunga is asking, have you tried embedding quiz questions within the Panopto video?
No. I know one can do it, but I haven't tried it. But because maybe it's also me. If I would take the class, I wouldn't watch the videos either. Because I'm a learner. I that takes too long to me. I can read much faster than I can watch a video. And if I get stuck on something, I can stop and think about it. And then I go on and read fast again. In a video, it's this pace, I have to stop it. And then if I already know it, it's kind of boring for a while because it goes over stuff that I know. So I wouldn't watch it either. But I know that's just me. Not everybody is that way. There are a lot of visual learners that much rather have videos than text, but still they don't watch it.
A quick question, Marianne. So have you heard from other faculty in your department? Do they have the same thing? Like students are not interested in videos, or is it just in your class?
I know Sean Lindsay, who teaches an online astronomy course, and it's a very popular course. And he also has like PDFs of his lecture notes, and he makes videos. And he makes videos that I would call professional. They're really good and short, and I watch them because I really enjoy them. And he says students don't watch. I mean, there are a few students that watch them, but overall students don't watch them.
Interesting.
This is for the online classes, for his online classes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So,
do we have more questions? Oh, Rachel, yes.
Thank you. I thought this was really interesting, and I was also thinking about embedding the quiz question. So for some context, I'm in the instructional technology program, first year assistant professor, and I do a lot of work in like multimedia learning environments and stuff like that. So I was recently reading an article that looks at video watching behavior, and they also look at it from the perspectives of students' motivational profiles. So some students were watching videos and some weren't, and they felt that the ones that were watching videos were the ones that actually, wanted to do well in the course, whereas those who were kind of scrubbing through the videos or like fast forwarding it or not even watching are the ones who just had like an avoidance profile. So they really just didn't want to seem like stupid to their friends, but they just wanted to do the bare minimum to like get through. So this just got me thinking about some of the work that I've read and some of the work that I'm interested in kind of getting into. So I just wanted to comment that I thought this is really fascinating. I guess the big question too is, how can we get students to really engage with the materials? That seems to be a common question that quite a few instructors are struggling with.
And it seems to me that in terms of engagement in Marian class, although ideally we want them to watch the video, they still are engaging using, the discussion board, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, so it brings up the question. So, I mean, we always encourage faculty to embed videos and to have quizzes. And so what works for one class may not work in another class, right? This is Mariana's class is an example of that, right? It's
Okay, and I have, I mean, like you can see on the schedule or under assignments, students have to engage with stuff. They have quizzes, they're just not embedded in the videos. They have 2 10-question quizzes per week. One is due Monday, one is due Wednesday. Some of those are multiple choice, some of those are formula questions, some of them are pick several answers that are right questions. So there are calculating questions, and then there are concept questions. Students in Physics 221, 222, most of the students are just grade driven. They want a good grade because they want to go to some professional school, and there the grade point average matters a lot. So they do everything for a grade. If you give them an extra point, they will do it, or at least try to do it. So, but the homework assignments, again, I can see that a lot of this, first of all, they love questions where you plug in numbers into formulas. Unfortunately, students seem to have been trained that science, in particular physics, is what's the formula? Let me plug in numbers into the formula, and that's it. I don't have to think about it. So those type of questions they like better than any kind of concept questions. These are much harder. What I think are trivial questions are the hardest questions for them. And then that's where there's a lot of the discussion is about. And then I have also seen that obviously, just as lab reports appear on cheating sites, old assignments appear on cheating sites. So I recycled some questions and I put some new ones in. And the new ones often go to questions that are actually worked out directly on the, well, I don't know if this one has, but like, well, this one doesn't have many, but if there's lots of problems that are worked out on the site. And so I make questions that follow one of these problems very closely. So if they just read the material, then they should be able to do the problem, because, or I make questions about the stuff that's in these red boxes, which I tell them, this is really the stuff, the concepts that are important. And I always make some new questions, and I can see on the discussion forum, if there's questions about the assignments, it's usually about the new questions, because from the old ones, they just already have the answer somewhere on from some old post on some cheating site. So it's interesting. They want to take the shortcuts, but you have to kind of motivate them. And the questions that I use have to motivate them to read the class materials. So I use questions to really refer to this class material. And I also use questions that make them do some of the stuff that they do in the lab. So I make sure they actually did it and didn't just copy it from somebody else. They get random numbers and, for example, have to put them in a spreadsheet, referring to an experiment, but I give them, each student gets different numbers. And they have to put it in a spreadsheet and do a linear regression or things like that, and then put the answer into the Canvas quiz. And that helps me make them read the material. So what you do with the videos, I just do with the text, kind of.
Thank you, Marianne, and thank you, Rachel, for sharing the link to the article. I'm really interested to read the article and see what it says. Almost about 1 o'clock. Do we have any other questions or comments? If we do not have any more questions or comments, thank you, Marianne, for today's session. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you again in August next year. And again, you're interested in leading this brown bag, please email me anytime, and I'm happy to meet with you so we can work out details for topics. Thank you and have a great weekend.